My stepdad had a heart attack and we found his secret phone. Exposing his affair led to shocking revelations about embezzlement. I, F29, recently discovered that my stepfather, Greg, M56, has been cheating on my mom, Linda, F52, for the past 8 years. This revelation has shattered our family and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about our relationships. My biological father, Jack, passed away when I was just 5 years old. He was a firefighter and died in the line of duty. I have faint memories of him. His laugh, the smell of his aftershave, and how he'd swing me around in circles until I was dizzy with laughter. After his death, my mom was devastated. She threw herself into work and raising me, barely keeping her head above water. For years, it was just the two of us against the world. We developed a close bond, but I could always sense a sadness in her, especially on holidays or my birthdays when Jack's absence was most noticeable. She dated occasionally, but nothing serious ever came of it. Then, when I was 14, she met Greg at a work conference. He was charming, successful, and seemed to bring the light back into her eyes. At first, I was wary. I didn't want anyone replacing my dad, and I was protective of my mom. But Greg was patient and kind. He never tried to force a relationship with me, instead letting it develop naturally. I remember the first time I really connected with Greg. It was about 6 months after he started dating my mom. I had a big science project due, and I was struggling with it. Greg, who worked as an engineer, sat with me for hours, explaining concepts and helping me build my project. When I got an A, he was as proud as if I were his own daughter. Over time, Greg became a true father figure to me. He was there for my high school graduation, taught me how to drive, and even walked me down the aisle at my wedding 3 years ago. He and my mom seemed to have the perfect relationship. They rarely argued, enjoyed the same hobbies, and always seemed genuinely happy together. Last month, everything changed. Greg had a heart attack while at work. It was sudden and terrifying. Mom and I spent days at the hospital, worried sick. When he was finally stable, the doctor said he needed to make some lifestyle changes, including reducing stress. While Greg was recovering, Mom and I decided to go through his home office to organize his work stuff and make things easier for him when he returned. That's when we found it, a burner phone hidden in a locked drawer of his desk. I still remember the sick feeling in my stomach when we turned it on. There were hundreds of messages and photos exchanged between Greg and a woman named Vanessa, F49. It was clear from the conversations that they had been having an affair for 8 years, more than half of Greg and Mom's marriage. When we confronted Greg about it, he broke down and confessed everything. Apparently, Vanessa was his college girlfriend. They had reconnected at a reunion shortly after his 5th wedding anniversary with Mom. He claimed he still loved Mom, but couldn't bring himself to end things with Vanessa. I was furious and disgusted. This man, who I had come to love and respect as a father, had been living a double life. He had stood beside me at my wedding, knowing full well he was betraying my mother. The hypocrisy of it made me sick. What made it worse was Vanessa's reaction when she found out we knew. Instead of backing off, she started reaching out to us. She sent long emails about how she and Greg were meant to be together and how she had sacrificed so much for their relationship. She even had the audacity to suggest that she deserved a portion of Greg's assets because of their long-term affair. Mom was a wreck. She oscillated between rage and despair. One moment, she'd be throwing Greg's clothes out the window. The next, she'd be sobbing in my arms, asking what she did wrong. Greg's constant apologies and Vanessa's harassment weren't helping. I couldn't stand seeing my mom like this. The strong woman who had raised me alone, who had pieced herself back together after losing her first husband, was falling apart. And for what? For a man who couldn't keep his vows? For a woman who thought she was entitled to our family because of an affair? That's when I decided to take action. I gathered all the evidence of the affair, the messages, the photos, the emails from Vanessa, and I posted it all on social media. I tagged Greg's friends, family, colleagues, everyone. I wanted the world to know what kind of man he really was. The aftermath was explosive. Greg's carefully cultivated image crumbled overnight. He lost his job. Apparently, his company had a morality clause in their contracts. Many of his friends turned their backs on him. His own family was horrified by his actions. Vanessa's life imploded too. Her husband found out about the affair and immediately filed for divorce. Her kids refused to speak to her. She lost her job as a school counselor when the scandal broke. Mom's initial reaction surprised me. She was angry, not at Greg or Vanessa, but at me. She said I should have let her handle it privately, that I had no right to air our family's dirty laundry. She argued that she might have wanted to try and work things out with Greg, and now that option was gone. I tried to explain that I was protecting her. I didn't want her to be manipulated by Greg's apologies or pressured by Vanessa's threats. I wanted her to be able to make a clear decision without their influence. but Mom couldn't see it that way. She said I had taken away her agency, her choice in how to handle her own marriage. Now, Greg and Vanessa are threatening legal action against me for defamation. They claim I've ruined their lives and reputations. Mom is torn between supporting me and trying to salvage what's left of her marriage. Some of our family members think I went too far, that I should have respected Mom's wishes and let her deal with it her way. But I don't regret what I did. I believe I was protecting my mom and exposing the truth. Greg and Vanessa had been lying and cheating for years. Why should they get to control the narrative now? Why should they get to hide their actions from the people they'd been deceiving? Still, seeing the fallout and how it's affected everyone, I'm starting to wonder if I overstepped. Did I do the right thing, or did I make everything worse? So, Reddit, aita for exposing my stepfather's affair and ruining his reputation? Update 1. It's been a month since my original post, and to say a lot has happened would be an understatement. I want to thank everyone for their comments and support. This has been an emotional roller coaster, and your perspectives have been helpful as I navigate this mess. After the initial shock wore off, Mom decided to file for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision for her. She spent days agonizing over it, reminiscing about the good times with Greg, wondering if their marriage could be saved. But in the end, she realized she could never trust him again. The divorce process has been messy and emotionally draining. Greg initially tried to convince Mom to reconsider. He promised to end things with Vanessa for good, suggested couples therapy, even offered to move out temporarily to give Mom space. But Mom stood firm in her decision. Vanessa, on the other hand, has become increasingly unstable. She's been calling and messaging Mom constantly. Sometimes she's pleading for understanding, talking about how she and Greg are soulmates and how Mom should let them be together. Other times, she makes veiled threats about exposing some of Greg's secrets if she doesn't get what she wants. It's been incredibly stressful for Mom, and I've had to step in multiple times to block Vanessa's numbers and social media accounts. The legal situation has gotten complicated. As threatened, Greg and Vanessa did file a lawsuit against me for defamation. Their case isn't very strong since everything I posted was true, but dealing with lawyers and legal paperwork has been a nightmare. Thankfully, Mom's divorce lawyer is helping me with this as well. What's been hardest to deal with is the family fallout. My stepsister Olivia, F27, Greg's daughter from his first marriage, is furious with me. We used to be close. She was even a bridesmaid at my wedding. But now she's not speaking to me. She says I had no right to air their family's dirty laundry and that I've ruined her relationship with her father. I tried to explain my side to Olivia, but she won't listen. She argues that Greg's affair, while wrong, was between him and Mom. She says I've turned a private matter into a public spectacle and hurt innocent people in the process. It's hard because I see her point, but I also believe she's in denial about who her father really is. Some of my aunts and uncles are also saying I went too far. They argue that infidelity, while painful, is common, and that publicly shaming Greg and Vanessa was cruel and unnecessary. My cousin Mark, M35, was particularly harsh, saying I was acting out of misplaced anger over losing my biological father and that I should have let Mom handle her own marriage. Mom's been going through a range of emotions. Some days she's angry and determined. Other days she's depressed and missing the life she thought she had. She admitted to me that part of her is relieved that everything is out in the open now. Apparently, she had suspicions about Greg for years, but always pushed them aside, not wanting to believe he could betray her like that. She told me about little things that had bothered her over the years. Greg's sudden interest in golf weekends, his protectiveness over his phone, the way he'd sometimes zone out during conversations as if his mind was elsewhere. She said she felt guilty for doubting him, especially given how good he'd been to me. It breaks my heart to think of her carrying those doubts all those years. I've been trying to support Mom as much as I can, but it's been challenging. I'm angry at Greg for putting us through this, and I'm struggling with my own feelings of betrayal. This man was my father figure for 15 years. He taught me to drive, helped me move into my first apartment, gave a touching speech at my wedding. Now I feel like I never really knew him at all. Despite all the drama and stress, I still don't regret exposing the affair. Yes, it's caused a lot of pain and chaos, but I believe it was necessary. Mom deserved to know the truth, and Greg and Vanessa needed to face the consequences of their actions. Living a lie for another 8 years wouldn't have made things any better. I'm not sure what the future holds for us. The divorce proceedings are ongoing, and the legal battle with Greg and Vanessa is far from over. But I'm determined to stand by my mom and help her through this difficult time, no matter what. She stood by me for all those years after my dad died, and now it's my turn to be strong for her. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and and things have taken an unexpected turn. The situation with Greg and Vanessa has escalated in ways I never anticipated. First, the good news. The defamation lawsuit against me was dismissed. The judge ruled that since I only shared factual information, it didn't constitute defamation. It was a relief, but the whole process was exhausting and expensive. I'm just glad it's over. Now, for the complicated part. Remember how Vanessa was threatening to expose Greg's secrets? Well, she made good on that threat, but not in the way any of us expected. 2 weeks ago, she came forward with evidence that Greg had been embezzling money from his company for years. Apparently, he had been using the stolen funds to finance their affair, including expensive gifts, hotels, and even a secret apartment. This revelation has turned everything upside down. Greg is now facing criminal charges, and his former company is conducting a full audit of their finances. It's a massive scandal, and our family is once again in the spotlight. Mom is devastated. She had no idea about the embezzlement, and now she's worried that she might be implicated somehow, even though she had nothing to do with it. Her lawyer assures her that she's not liable, but the stress is taking a toll on her health. She's lost weight and is having trouble sleeping. As for me, I'm feeling a mix of vindication and guilt. On one hand, this proves that Greg was even more deceitful than we initially thought. On the other hand, I can't help but wonder if my actions somehow pushed Vanessa to expose this. Would Greg's crimes have come to light if I hadn't posted about the affair? Olivia, my stepsister, reached out to me for the first time since this all began. She's in shock about her father's actions and feeling lost. Despite our earlier falling out, she admitted that she's grateful the truth is out now, even though it's painful. We're slowly rebuilding our relationship, bonding over our shared sense of betrayal and disillusionment. The family dynamics continue to be strained. Some relatives who initially criticized me for exposing the affair are now apologizing, saying they didn't realize how deep Greg's deception went. Others are still upset, arguing that if I had kept quiet, we could have dealt with the affair privately and avoided this public scandal. Mom is focusing on finalizing the divorce and distancing herself from Greg's legal troubles. She's also started seeing a therapist to help her process everything that's happened. I'm proud of her for taking steps to heal and move forward. As for Greg, he's facing serious legal consequences. Last I heard, he's trying to negotiate a plea deal. Vanessa seems to have disappeared from the picture entirely after dropping her bombshell. Part of me wonders if she had known about the embezzlement all along and was using it as leverage. I'm still processing everything that's happened. While I stand by my decision to expose the affair, I never imagined it would lead to all of this. It's been a harsh reminder that actions can have far-reaching consequences, beyond what we can predict or control. Update 3. 6 months have passed since my last update, and it feels like our lives have been completely transformed. The dust has finally started to settle, and we're all trying to adjust to our new normal. Greg pleaded guilty to the embezzlement charges and is now serving a 5-year prison sentence. The company he worked for managed to recover most of the stolen funds, but the whole ordeal has left a lasting impact on everyone involved. Mom's divorce was finalized 3 months ago. She got a fair settlement considering Greg's legal troubles. She's slowly rebuilding her life and has even started dating again, which is both weird and wonderful to see. She's met a kind man named Robert through her book club, and while it's early days, it's nice to see her smiling again. Olivia and I have grown closer through this experience. We've had many long conversations about family, trust, and dealing with disappointment. She's struggling with visiting Greg in prison, but is working through her feelings with a therapist. We've started having weekly sister dates, which has been healing for both of us. Vanessa reached out to me last month, surprisingly. She apologized for her behavior and admitted that she was blinded by her feelings for Greg. She's in therapy now and is trying to make amends with her ex-husband and children. While I appreciate her apology, I've made it clear that I don't want her in our lives. As for me, I'm still grappling with the consequences of my actions. While I don't regret exposing the truth, I've learned a lot about the complexities of human relationships and the ripple effects of our choices. I've started volunteering at a support group for families affected by infidelity, hoping to channel my experience into something positive. Our extended family is slowly healing too. The initial divisions are fading as everyone comes to terms with what happened. We recently had a family reunion, and while it was awkward at times, it felt like a step towards reconciliation. My cousin Mark, who was initially very critical of my actions, pulled me aside to apologize. He admitted that he had been projecting his own marital issues onto our situation, and that he now understands why I did what I did. Looking back, I never could have imagined how a single decision would change so many lives so dramatically. It's been a difficult journey, but I believe we're all emerging stronger and wiser. The truth, as painful as it was, set us free in many ways. Now, we're all focused on building a future based on honesty and trust.